I woke up excited about today. Today's going to be a beast of an episode. I have a good friend of mine, John Marsh, who I have been spending quite a bit of time with the last few months and made one of the biggest impacts on me almost immediately. And today, after today's episode, y'all will understand why that is. John's an amazing man. John, thank you so much for joining me today. Welcome.
Oh man, I'm excited. This is going to be a lot of fun. I love hanging out with smart folks, and you are. And your podcast is great. Amazing number of episodes, and it's added tons of value to me. So we're looking forward to it.
Well, right back at you, man. So you'll this will make more sense to everybody once we're done. But you have a line, and you said, "Everywhere I look, something is broken or undone." Buildings and marriages. And we've spent time talking about both. And that's what we're going to do today. But can you just kind of start with what that means to you and why you kind of see the world that way and then what you do about it?
Yeah, it's interesting. I've realized that so much of what you go through is important of where you're going to. No time is really wasted. And so my story and my life story and me and my wife's story in our company is that we were broken. And in that brokenness, we saw something that was beautiful. And there is beauty in broken things, whether we're restoring cities, and we have done a lot of that. We've done over 275 structures in 10 square blocks in our city. We've started over 60 businesses to create flourishing in our city, from broken buildings and broken dreams. But that all came out of the fact that Ash and I grew up. My mom, 13 years, tried to have a child, couldn't, adopted me, and 18 months later had my little brother. And she said, all I ever wanted to do was spoil you. All I wanted to be was a mama. And so she did a great job of spoiling me. I was AB honor roll up till I was about 13 years old and stepped across the line with a little girl and rode my bike to her house, and we had sex. And I went against what I believe was my family and against God, and I started rebelling. And rebellion is a powerful thing. I rebelled, my brother didn't, and he was blessed because he didn't, and it cost me heavy because I did. And this took my life as step by step into coming into a future of where I was going to be experiencing more and more brokenness, because you don't plant corn and get apples. So I ended up 17 years old. I tried drugs for the first time and decided I wanted to be a world-class drug addict. Ended up blowing up my life. And by 23 years old, I was $1.5 million in debt, $99,000 overdrawn, going through a divorce with Ash, my wife, and she had left me for one of my employees, and I was hooked on meth. So going in the attic of my house to hang myself, I kept hearing, kill yourself. And then I heard a different voice say, no, just die to yourself. Lay your life down so you can find it. And that's what happened to me. My entire life changed in the attic of that house. And I began to find a new path. And so out of that broken life of shattered dreams, there's been all this beauty come out of it, where now Ash and I steward about $1.7 billion worth of redemptive real estate in 9 cities, helping couples, companies, and communities flourish. So I wouldn't be where I am if I hadn't been through what I went through. So that's why everything we still see beauty in broken things.
And that, my friends, is the probably the most intense intro I've ever come across. And I'm gonna go a little further with it. So you go up into that attic and you hear that that voice in your head, and maybe there's a lot of people that haven't taken it to that extreme, but they have that voice in their head that's telling them there's something better. What'd you do after you kind of had that moment? What did the next week, day, year, what did it look like going forward? How did you make the change? Because being addicted to meth is no joke.
No, and really, to go back to the attic, I'd planned that attic, and I kept hearing, kill yourself, kill yourself. Your life isn't worth living. And both of those things are true. I mean, I was in a bad situation, wanting to reconcile with my wife. We both had lawyers fighting for custody of our son, and I was watching her go out on dates with one of my employees. So it was a situation where I'd failed. If the person that's the closest to you likes you the least, something's really wrong. And so I was in that place, and I laid down on that plywood floor and just weeping. I really wasn't scared of dying. I was scared of living. But laying my life down gave me, if there's hope in your future, there's power in your present. And bam, I got hope. And when I come out of that place, she was waiting downstairs. I was like, hey, baby, my life just changed. She said, you're a liar. She didn't believe me. I said, well, you'll see. A man of integrity, his feet line up with his mouth. And if people don't want what you got to wonder what you have. And so I did get hope. And that's one thing. Hope is like air. Everybody needs it. But the hope began to be that there's something better in the future for me than what I've experienced. And so what I began to do is get wise counsel. This is a key, is began to get around the kind of man I wanted to be. And everybody will say, well, how do you find great mentors? Well, man, they're everywhere. I feel like a mosquito in a nudist colony. They're everywhere. You just got to know what to look for. And I tell people, I say, if you want to find a great mentor, have someone that speaks to your heart, not your head. And if your heart burns when they're talking, ask for another conversation. Say, hey, could you give me 30 minutes a month? Most folks will give you 30 minutes a month. And when they do, show up. If we're going to take them to lunch, don't eat. Let them eat and you talk. But get someone in your life that they harmonize and make your heart sing. And then opportunity began to come slowly at first. But if you look at your daily disciplines, that's the second thing I changed the way I live daily. However you live daily is the game. If I watch how you live daily, I can tell you where you're going to be in 10 years if you don't change. And I say there's five areas to focus on: faith, family, fun, fitness, and finance. That's my 5 F's. And so if you've got a much more sophisticated plan for your finances than you do for your family or your faith, I'd encourage you to get some detail on those things and intentionality.
One of the things we talked about, it's also a word that starts with F, was forgiveness. And you and I have talked a lot about that. And you said something along the lines of, for you to resurrect your marriage with Ashley, there had to be a lot of forgiveness, both her forgiving you for what you had been through, and then you forgiving her for what she had been through. A lot of folks, if their wife was dating one of their employees, they might not ever be able to get over that. Can you just speak a little more to what you went through to forgive, and what forgiveness does for somebody's life, how it can change their life?
Suffering. Forgiveness is suffering. And the first thing about it, I was deceived about it when I asked the definition of forgiveness and how you apply it. If your definition and your application is not aligned with the truth, it won't work. And so forgiveness is not forgetting the offense happened. It's not stuffing it under the rug till the rug doesn't touch the floor anymore. It's not saying, hey, that person's always going to be that way. Forgiveness is something you receive and give away. You can't manufacture the stuff. So you got to receive it. First is personal forgiveness. The hardest person you'll ever forgives you because you know why you did it, but you can't give what you don't have or live. So, and the second thing, and the biggest for me, is I thought forgiveness was a vaccination. Once you get it, you're done. It's one and done. Thank goodness I forgave them for that. No. It's a second by second, minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day choice of your will. And you may be living 29 days of hell today and 1 day of heaven. But as you grow, like now, I think I'm living, 29 days of heaven and a day of hell, but I'm still pushing hell back. There's still days and times where I struggle with what happened in mine and Ashley's relationship. It's quick. Maybe I see the person she loved me for here in town still lives here. Maybe something, I think about it. Oh God, I remember when, and I got a choice. I'm the gatekeeper of my mind. I can either exercise this gift of forgiveness on that situation, that little bitty, another dose of forgiveness, and say, no, I choose to forgive that. I choose. Or I can just keep messing with it and throw some wood on the fire and see if that makes the fire go out.
Yep. A lot of folks that listen to this, it's a business podcast, it's a real estate podcast. A lot of, guys in their, mid 30s, late 20s, early 40s. Part of the later part of your career is you've worked with a lot of folks on the concept of marriage. I just wanted to start with, like, what typically happens to people that are kind of hard charging, entrepreneurial business? There tends to be a pattern of what could happen in a marriage. And you've worked with so many of these people. Like, what have you learned? And for folks that are, what, no matter where they are in their marriage, like what ultimately are you helping provide and try and teach people over time in the work that you do with married couples?
Well, I think the thing I've seen is that most people make a mistress out of money and success. And so they wonder why. I mean, I think I won Ash by false advertising. I used the same gifts I used to build great projects to win her. I told her, you're going to be the center of my world. I made her feel amazing. I sold her just like we do big deals. And then I changed the deal, false advertising. Now that I got you, check the box off. And I thought marriage was about sex and supper. And as long as those two were going good, I thought that thing was humming along. Now, one of those stopped working. I thought, oh man, we may have problems here. But there's a lot more to marriage than sex and supper. I mean, it's a complex thing. In fact, most of the time, the good Lord sends you the grit sandpaper you need. And for most of us hard chargers, it's heavy grit paper, 20 grit or 36 grit, because we need to change. And so our compatible opposite comes into our life, and we think, man, she's a dream squisher. I tell you what, this is the person that most aggravates me in my whole life, and I'm married to her. I'm hooked myself to the Unabomber. But what you have to start getting to is that marriage is designed to be a tremendous blessing. But it's going to take more work than going to the gym. It's going to take more work than building a huge portfolio of real estate or leading large teams, because it's designed to be a change agent in our life. So what I do is I help show them that they really, I mean, think if we put the amount of time, and the minute I say this, they're going to go, oh, who can do that? And I know anybody good at making excuses is going to struggle at doing anything else. But put as much time into your marriage as you put into your best deals. Put as much intention and love and care, because if not, you're going to wreck your family. I mean, would you consider a guy that's a success, that's made hundreds of millions of dollars? He's tan and fit as he can be. Everybody in the community loves him, and his kids and wife hate him. Is that guy a success? No way. And so we have to make it a high priority. I mean, and if you want it to be a high priority, just show me your plan. I mean, if I told you it's a high priority to develop 100 acres outside of town with this industrial complex, and they said, well, you got to perform on this thing, or you got any great plans? No. I'm winging it, but it's a big high priority. It's like, dude, your marriage is more complicated than developing 100 acres. I mean, so that's the deal. Have a plan for success, and work that plan as if it's a priority, and don't be entrepreneurially promiscuous. I mean, it's so easily excitable to do a deal, but it's not. When you go home and talk to your wife and sit down and listen to her, it's not exciting at all.
Yep. All right. Opelika. Did I say that right?
You nailed it.
Opelika, Alabama. Will you describe what Opelika, Alabama was like growing up, and then what it was like before you built this wonderful real estate career?
Well, I didn't grow up here. I grew up about 2 hours away. My wife grew up here. I've been in Opelika since I was about 18 years old or so. So, I mean, I've been here 30 something years, and it is home. I love this place. Sometimes you get in your heart a place that you didn't come from, and it's more home than your home. But when I got here, it was just a depressed place. It had lost vision. And like people, we ask three questions every time we go into a new place. Who are you? Who do you serve? And who's going to pay for it? And every company and every community that can't answer those questions, if you don't know who you are, you'll try to be somebody else. And to tell you the truth, I'd be a horrible Chris. I got enough trouble being John. And so a lot of communities and developments try to be somebody else. We're going to be the Silicon Valley of the South. No, you're not. You can't be somebody else. You got to figure out who you are. And they had forgotten who they were. Opelika is an industrial community from the past. It was textiles. And so we had huge textile mills. We had DP, Diversified Products, the first weightlifting exercise company of that scale. And we had Ampex digital tapes. We build and make things here. A lot of machinists and hands-on guys. That's why the car industries are flooding to these areas. Alabama's the number one car manufacturers now in the country because we've got such a workforce of people who have skills. But Opelika had died. It was all boarded up. And when we fell in love with it here, we bought a junky old house that started and worked on it for 6.5 years, one paycheck at a time, living in 500 square foot. And when we got done, my wife said, well, what do you want to do? I said, do another one. And I'd found something I was passionate about. I was in the automobile business at that time. And I fell in love with structures, and we started buying up residential triplexes, duplexes, and began to renovate them and relocate them. And that's what happened. It was broken. And so at the time when I was coming out of that brokenness, my whole town was broken and ash. And I just said, well, what if we just made a difference in one house? So one house at a time. We think we do sophisticated real estate development with love. That's it's got all the sophistication that any other developer would have, but we do it with love. And that's a game changer. Love makes stuff look different.
And I would assume that especially early on, when the typical, real estate person thinks about real estate, they start throwing out, big words, cap rate, leverage, lease rates, et cetera, et cetera. I'm going to guess you didn't kind of start with that. It wasn't driven by the keywords that we have. And I think a lot of people that are in places like this, where I think there's more people on this earth, and you know this better than anybody, that think, man, I could really make a difference here. But they look around and they say, if I put too much money into this house, there's no house like this. There's no market that would serve something like this. So my question is kind of, what did you learn early on that showed that there was a market for something that for so long there had been nothing before, and you kind of created something that, from what we've talked about, exists kind of everywhere?
Yeah, it's really interesting, and you're exactly right. I didn't understand any of the terminology, and anytime you come into a world of any type of work, one of the things I do now is begin to understand the vocabulary so you can speak the language. But all I knew is these were junky things, and I knew I loved junky things, and I really didn't see any real money in it. I just thought it'd be cool, and I've been always chasing my passion. So we started restoring these houses. I didn't have any money, so we would lease with purchase option them. They were sitting there vacant when they were paying the property tax. There wasn't any power on them. So we say, how about I give you no money down and payments of $200 a month for the first year and $300 the second year, and then I'll pay you off. And we'd fix them up. And it was just slowly by slowly, we started to see, before this business, I was in the salvage yard and the rebuild business. We rebuilt total Toyota 4Runners, Land Cruisers, Tundras, Sequoias, and Lexus. That's all we did. We do a lot of those. And what I realized is a rebuilt car nobody wants. Has your car been wrecked? I don't want it. A rebuilt house or remodel, people are like, ooh, love that thing, remodeled. And it's the same thing. I mean, and so I said, well, in one venue it's celebrated, and another one is tolerated. So I saw the same kind of things. I didn't have any house guy relationships, so I just brought all the car guys I know. We started fixing houses because I figured, hey, a house is like a car with plumbing. It just sits still and the car moves. So we started fixing these things, and next thing you know, I had a lot going. I mean, I had like 12 or 15 construction jobs going around our city. And I didn't know any better, so I do fixed pricing and guaranteed timeframes on historic renovation. I didn't know you shouldn't do that, so I just did. And everything I could say, I started out as being the stupidest guy in the room. But so we were doing that. I'm getting a lot of business, and we're finishing them on time, and I'm making some money at it. And what ended up happening, the city came to me and said, buddy, you got to get some license. You can't be doing all this work without license. I said, oh, sorry, didn't know I needed license. So I had to go get some license and work through that process. But I met a man when I was broke and broken, and he grew up in a mill village with a high school education, ended up running the largest real estate company in the world. He helped build Century 21. And he told me, he said, John, I'm going to treat you like my son. I sold him a vehicle, and that's how I met him. I said, what does that mean? He said, I'm not giving you any money, but I'm going to teach you everything I know. And so the first thing he had to teach me, there was 3 questions he made me answer before he would teach me anything is, how much is enough? What are you going to do when you get enough? What's your living plan? And what's your giving plan? And so I was dumb and broke. I'm like, how much is enough? I need $500 for my power bill, and you're asking me how much is enough? This is a dumb question. You're rich. Help me. But he wouldn't. He just loved me and taught me. And so what we began to see is I would do 9 houses for others and 1 for me. 9 houses for others, 1 for me. Well, pretty soon we were doing 8 for others and 2 for us. And over time, we got to the place where we were doing them all for us. And our construction crew today still just does our own work. We still own about 130 properties in these 10 blocks and steward our town. We have dedicated our hearts to stewarding 10 square blocks here, which we never thought was anything special. Ended up being, I learned how to understand complex mixed-use developments called historic downtowns. And so we view them with sophisticated planning. And now the largest town we're in doing this is Winter Haven, Florida, where our clients there have about a $200 million portfolio, 80 blocks of a downtown, a good portion of it. And the smallest town we're in is 800 people. And our clients there spend $110 million on a town of 800 trying to make it grow. So we've got them all in between. There's these big ones, and then we do projects and portfolio-based stuff. So our projects, sometimes we'll help people in that'll, like we did at Kenosha, Wisconsin. We did a project for a big brewery and an event business for some guys. And then some of our portfolio things are, much, much bigger than that. So I know we got off the house thing, but it just grew, started learning, and step by step being faithful. We never took outside capital from anyone. Ash and I just personally guaranteed everything at the bank and put our butts on the line, threw the parts to a plane off a cliff and jumped with it. And the banks helped teach me a lot. Those boys taught me a lot.
Yeah.
Not how to make money, but how to pay money. And so I had to learn I was 30 days from failure every time I took on a new project, because that's when the first payments came in.
Is it fair to say that to do these, kind of restoration projects, especially on where you're basically changing an entire city, one of the key ingredients is you can't have short-term money. You can't have these 3 to 5 year performas. You have to have a 20 to 30 year vision with capital that will stand behind that. And my guess is the first few years don't look, eye-popping, but you look over 30 years and it's way better than you could ever imagine. So you really couldn't get into this with short-term money, could you? It has to be long-term patient money.
Actually, there's both. And it's interesting because remember, our projects, we don't use a lot so people would think we use incentives and outside. We used a little bit of tax credits, but most everything we do makes absolute sense on the pro forma without any outside incentives. And a lot of times you can do you could do project by project, and every project should make sense. We think it's a 7-year time horizon for it to start looking where a traditional investor would understand. Probably the people that we deal with, the minimum hold is 10, and some people are building things that are going to last, generations. I mean, our question we ask ourselves about our assets is, do they create human flourishing? And that means, does it make not only profit, but the place better? Does it make people's lives better? But also we ask, what could we do that would last 50 years and no one be able to undo it? That for the city's good. And if it does that, now, do we think you've got to make profit? Yes, profit is like gas for the car. You got to have it. But we also think we have to have a purpose and impact. And we work at the intersection of purpose and profits. One thing we don't do, and we're actually asked about this a lot, we don't build things that are only built through benevolence. A lot of family offices will reach out to us and think it's a part of their giving arm or other people. We just don't build that stuff. I said, I don't like fig trees that don't make figs. I think that's stupid. You go buy the figs at Kroger and stick it on the fig tree and people come take it off, and you go buy more figs at Kroger. I said, this thing don't make figs. I wonder if it's a fig tree. And so we build things that make social, spiritual, and economic capital. And those are the frameworks we do. So our investments can be attractive at 7 years. I mean, Winter Haven, Florida is a good example. They raised $100 million or so from 60 locals that are invested in this community development fund, and so it pays a decent distribution and appreciation on it. And we've figured out how to create some really a strategic secondary market so people could come in and out of the asset. And we solve some of the complex problems that's there. But a lot of our clients are like us, like Ash and I. They're investors who love the place and are going to invest in it. And it's not uncommon for us to use bank leverage, in the process. So you got to be able to pay.
Okay, on people's making people's lives better, and you started with houses. Everybody has a good kind of framework for what Opelika was like when you started. And then you kind of moved into commercial. And I think one of the things that you told me early on was all the businesses that you started creating. So it wasn't just the real estate. Then you had to build businesses that could flourish and ultimately make people's lives better. So let's talk about that. First off, how did you start on the commercial side? Was it the same as kind of houses where there were all these empty buildings in downtown Opelika and you just started, kind of the same way, buying and renovating them? What was the difference between residential and commercial?
Well, one thing there's vacant buildings. The first building in downtown Opelika we bought for $13,000, owner finance, no money down. It was $200 a month, too. And so the whole $200 a month was a key factor in the early thing, because that's about what I figured I could afford on something that was sitting vacant, and it would just about cover, what the people thought that the taxes would be, and then we'd find ways to improve it. But we bought the first building, and what we realized, our mistake was we bought that building. Then somebody came to us and had like 5 buildings. They said, "We'll sell you all of them, no money down, and pay you $60,000 to take them, but you got to pay us off in like 36 months." And we were like, "Oh, okay, great." And so I was super ambitious at this stuff. We didn't have any money. And the great thing about having no money, and when people say, "I put everything on the line," well, you didn't have anything. That's like putting zero down if you don't have anything, if you put everything on the line. So it's like being kind of pregnant. Once you're pregnant, you can be a lot more promiscuous. And so what we did is we did that, and we thought people were going to come and flood the building. So our number one mistake was we thought renovation was revitalization, and it's not. It's just renovation. So we fix the buildings, and then we're sitting there drinking Maylocks and trying not to send the keys back to the bank. And we're like, "Oh Lord, we missed it here." So the chamber gonna bring the businesses? Who's gonna bring the businesses? And then that's our second mistake. Towns are like wheelbarrows. Somebody's got to push them. So we had to start going out trying to find businesses. We couldn't find any businesses, but you know what we could find? People who wish they could start a business. So then we started a Rent a Dream program. You got a dream and we need some rents. Let's figure out how to get together. And so the first one was a salon. A girl that was a friend of Ash's, she had been in school with Ash and had to drop out at 17 because she got pregnant. And by 20 something, she had become a hairstylist and pretty darn good, had a little booth rent. And we started a salon downtown that's still there today. And it's doing, almost $2 million a year now. The salon and boutique was started by this one girl with a dream who loved doing hair. Now she's probably the best in our entire region. So we started and crashed a lot of small businesses. So that's where it started. We'd start one, we'd try something, we'd start a bar, we'd start a retail shop, or we'd start a this or that. I mean, just the craziest things, and just try them and bring people in. And so that's kind of how we started filling them, because one thing we figured out that we were doing it for rent. We were starting businesses for rent. And then as we got more sophisticated, we starting restaurants, which was huge, because what we do in restaurants is started with a base rents against a percentage that would allow us to have upside and put our gifts toward it. And so first restaurant we started downtown, they hoped they would do $700,000 a year. They did $1.7 million the second year, 2.3 the third year. And our rents was hooked to a percentage of gross that ratcheted from that base at $1 million, million and a half, 2 million. So the rents were incredible. And that business sold for $1 million, business only, 3 years after we started it. And we kind of figured we were onto something.
All right, we got to dig into this. So starting the barbershop and the restaurants. I mean, some people might listen and say that is a totally different skill set than what you said was buying and renovating buildings is totally different than starting a barbershop and what'd you call it? Renting dreams.
Rent a dream program.
How and y'all have successfully started I think 60 plus businesses, right? So what's the formula? What's the secret? How does this work?
Do you want me to tell you how to crash them, which has been the biggest thing I've done, or how to make them work?
Let's start there. Let's start with what you don't want to see happen. How does that? Okay. How does the bad stuff happen?
My not to do list is sophisticated. So don't just pick someone who's good at cooking and put them in the restaurant. Don't just pick somebody who's good at making coffee and put them in a coffee shop. Don't just what we realized is that the trade is only a small piece of the need of the business. So 60 to 70% of it is the business, the platform that supports the business, and a very small percentage is the actual craft to do it. So what we learned over time is that we don't invest into projects, we invest into people. We pick the leader, and then we ask ourselves specific questions like some of our clients, we do still launch. We launched 2 restaurants a couple years ago. We're working on one right now. We launched 2 in Midland, Texas for our client there. We launched Opal's Table 5 years ago. And right at the beginning of the pandemic, we launched Pie Social, which is an incredible. It's a pizza restaurant we think we did 2.5 million last year. I think we'll do close to 3 this year in a 75-seat pizza place. I mean, we know one thing, nothing can make the impact in a development like a sophisticated, iconic restaurant. But they're hard to build. It's like trying to stuff a bunch of badgers in a box. It's not an easy deal. It's like wholesale, retail, manufacturing, entertainment, and daycare all under one roof. I mean, but what else can do almost $3 million a year in 2,000 square foot, except like a meth lab, and they're against the law?
Okay, well then the first question: how do you pick a leader? What how do you know you found the person?
Well, for us, we look first at what do they believe, because your beliefs drive your behavior. If their identity is broken, we can't fix that in a small amount of time. Identity is going to derive so much of it, and what we do is we try to match the business with who they truly are, not what they say they want. Once we've identified talent, so like in a restaurant, we'll ask ourselves, how are they at the back of house? How are they at the front of the house? How are they at marketing? How are they at the accounting? And then how are they at skills of leadership? And if we don't have those 5, we've got about a 200 item list and some personality testing we do. 5 voices, Enneagram, DNA, desires, needs, and affirmation, and the positivity quotient. Those are the 5 things we test. Once we get this composite of who they are, we run them through a 2-day intensive and say it's a go or no go. Like we've got one coming in we're working in Moments, Illinois right now for some clients there that they own a factory. They're $1 billion company that makes freeze dries and raises organic vegetables and spices and freeze dries them and distributes them and then makes supplements out of it. Well, they want to save their city. They got 3,500 workers in a town of 3,000, and it's a ghost town. They want to grow the city to make it more attractive. So we're looking at an iconic restaurant there. They'll send the operator in. We'll take 2 days and vet them, and we'll give them a thumbs up or a thumbs down if we think they'll be successful. And then if they are going to be successful, we'll normally build a theme, a platform, and launch it with them and for them and run it 90 days and hand the keys over. So that's one segment of our business around the hospitality side that launches restaurants in different places. But what we'll know, if we bet on the person, we don't bet on the place, we don't bet on the project. You can't make a bad deal with a good guy, and you can't make a good deal with a bad guy. A bad deal with a good guy will turn out to be a good deal.
Yep. Okay, but you said that you want to know how they are front of restaurant, back of restaurant, marketing, accounting. So but if so, I'm assuming that these people, these operators, have come with some experience in the restaurant industry. If not,
Sometimes
how would you even know if they're good at the back of office or front of restaurant or marketing? How do you even know if that's
we take
something
them
they're
through
good at?
that intensive and we test them. But like for example, one of the most successful ones we launched in Midland, Texas, at Opal's Table, 80-seat fine dining place. It is incredible. It is just, I mean, it's knocked the cover off the ball. He was a caterer. He had been a previous chef for like NFL players, and then he had a catering business. So we knew he knew how to make food, and we knew because caterers are amazing because they cook half their stuff on sternos. You give them actually a dang kitchen, they're just glowing because they're used to doing it MacGyver style. But he didn't have the back of office. So what we did, we started by building a piece of connectivity kind of disciplines that was really some real clunky software that connected the front of the house and the back of the house. And so why restaurants fail most of the time is because the front of the house and the back of the house is disconnected in the financials. So imagine if they run 30 days and then a P&L comes in that's 30 days old and they get a chance to adjust. They do that 12 times a year. There's no way they can make meaningful progress, really. What we decided is we needed to know how food and labor was doing daily, and actually preferably by the session. So we developed some ways to do that, and then later on we found a piece of software we now implement. So what we would do in that case is we would help them hire a partner or a leader that would run the accounting and back office, and then we built a back office solution that's now in Austin with a team that handles all the restaurants we do now. We send it over and they handle the back office accounting with the software that we install so that they have the best chance of being successful.
And does that person have to, if you're going to open a restaurant with somebody, does that person have to be willing to live in the town and be part of the restaurant day in and day out? They can't do this from, their office somewhere in another part of the country.
Right. And understand, we never work for restaurant people. I've never had a restaurant guy hire us to do this. We do this for investors and developers who need this in their communities. Like for us, I hate doing it. Actually, it's like, it's painful. It's like making sausage. Nobody likes seeing it. But we do it because I can't think of anything any better to take real estate and radically increase the value of an area than have an iconic restaurant anchoring, a place. So that's like, we're launching one here in our town right now. We're working on it, and it's simply to take a new community we're building, and remember, it's iconic. People don't pay for ordinary, they pay for extraordinary. I never go to your town and say, man, I had the best experience in the world. Where did you go? Ruby Tuesdays. Nobody says that because their goal is to disappoint you at a rate you'll stand. That ain't going to get us there. We got to get to the place where you go somewhere. I tell you, what's so interesting. We got one restaurant we helped in a town of 3,500, and it's Stanford, Kentucky. Little town. That restaurant sees 8,800 people a month in a town of 3,500. It's not open on Sundays. It's a dry county. It don't have alcohol, and it's only open breakfast and lunch Monday through Thursday and dinner Friday and Saturday. And it sees 8,800 people a month, and up to 50% of those people are from up to an hour away. So it tells you iconic things. We could put them anywhere. With the right setup, people will drive and pay for excellence. They will not for ordinary.
So if we took that Pi Social, a lot of Midland, Texas, is the answer to this question. If I had started, the same pizza joint in the same location, kind of the way that, most people tend to think about it, the reason why Pi Social will do 3 million, it starts with the person. But then once you have that person, what drives an extraordinary experience? Customer service, good food? Like what is it? Is it all the above? How do you get the perfect?
Well, I mean, some of the perfect things is first, it's got to follow a golden thread like a movie. How many times have you watch a trailer that has been adapted to get us to the place, and then we watch the movie and it's nothing like the movie? Because they took the best pieces of the movie and made a story the movie didn't tell. Well, if our name, so here's the questions we asked ourselves, because Midland's a funky town. It's crazy. It's like the Bermuda Triangle or something. I mean, it's a strange place. But we asked ourselves, are we going to build a pizza place that has a great bar, or are we going to build a bar that has great pizza? Just that. I mean, here's the thing: if you don't have a clear vision, you've got division. And so that is radically different what I just said. If we built a bar that has great pizza or a pizza place that has a good bar, that's to us, that's two different themes, two different restaurants. We built a bar that has great pizza because we knew we wanted to do 40% of our sales in alcohol and not in food, because it takes a lot different time to pour a drink than it does make a pizza. And there's a lot more money in pouring drinks than making pizzas. Now, other places we make it all about the food, so it's dependent on. So we had that. Secondly, we ask ourselves, what's the story we're trying to tell? Like, if you think about it, when the thing people love at Disney World is sophisticated real estate development with incredible programming in a swamp, right? And so if you take the programming off Disney World, its value goes down dramatically, right? So what we know that same thing. How much of real estate's value is emotional? It's a good question, right? We talk about it often. We say people ought to have a love experience with what we build. They should love what we build. Like, the problem with our thing, if we ever close a business we started, people have unforgiveness after us because we closed something they loved or sold something they loved. And the biggest mistakes I made is that place that I told you went from nothing to almost 3 million, and we sold it for $1 million for business only. We kept the real estate. We let it be sold to a guy who was with the Darden Group. My wife had met him when she worked at Red Lobster years and years ago. He was 19 years with Red Lobster, 11 years with Longhorn, who Darden bought. So he had 30 years in the restaurant business. He came and bought that restaurant and crashed it in 24 months. Took it from 3 million to less than $1 million. And I never would have thought that would happen. I thought, man, I have just got punched without a cup on. This had messed us up. And the mistake I made was this, is that I thought that people who fly 747s could build 747s, and they can't. So we had built this hybrid iconic thing that was run by very gifted people. And then it all of a sudden it sells to a guy. The key to guys that run the Darden restaurants is there's an amazing system that they just do what the system says. This other thing we had built, because I didn't know at the time, was like playing jazz. You had to know how to play. And so he ended up crashing it, and we've had to rebuild it. So that's a challenge too, is, if you don't have a system, you are the system in any business. And so we spend a lot of times, we work now in our coaching consulting from in the oil industry. We help oil executives be better relationally. We help these towns and teams and companies, but it's always around these core principles we built. I say my life is about 4 things. I help people grow personally, love God passionately, do good work purposefully, and live intentionally. If I do one of those 4 things, I can't lose for winning. When I'm doing that, I've got supernatural gifts and favor on my life. It's just like shooting fish in a barrel. So we do that across these industries that we help companies, couples, and communities. And that's kind of how we bring it into all of them. So I don't want it to just stay focused on the restaurant is a big piece, but it's the same thing. We've got over, 700 multifamily units going right now in our different towns. And so if you ask me about multifamily, I tell you the same story. It's got to have a story. It's got to be connected to the community. It's got to be intentional. There's got to be the leaders and the anchors, from leasing to the raising of capital to the building. We in the multifamily, we're working on one right now. Our question was, can we build something we'll be proud of in 30 years? What do we hate about multifamily developments in our community that looks so homogenized? Doesn't look like love got even in the program, because what used to be built by master builders who had a passion for what they're building is now built by spreadsheets and private equity. That by the time you get to the finishes, all the love's missing. If it was a lady, she'd be wearing a junky dress, no makeup, her hair's not fixed, no earrings. I mean, it's like their goal is to disappoint me at a rate I'll stand.
All right, we're at a hot topic because multifamily is all the rage. It has been. You just said it. It's basically manufactured widgets now. So let's go a little deeper on this. What in your and you said you got to ask the story. But let's get into it. What would make a multifamily project that you would be proud of? Is it the size of the units? Is it the amenities? Is it walkable, or is it none of those things? Is it kind of trying to teach a multifamily business to play jazz? Like, how do you think about it? This is a big topic.
It's really important. And the questions, I love every question you say. I want to say yes. And it's all those things. I mean, it takes all the sophistication the guys building widgets have plus. So, I mean, a lot of things we've got our multifamily partner that we're working with and our clients, they have a set floor plan that they've been using for a long time. They've kind of dialed in. Not only do they build them, but they hold them 10 years. So they've really got operational excellence in how we've got to maintain these units. So what we had to ask ourselves is how do we take these room layouts and adjust the facades to make them attractive, knowing we've got this layout of where the stair corridors are and where the elevators and these other pieces. So what we start asking ourselves is we say, so our projects start with vision. That's our number one. So our momentum method is vision first. Then after you have your vision, you come to strategy, written plan. Then you have team and roles. Then you have alignment, execution, success, and succession. That's our overarching framework for projects, whether it's restaurants, whether it's towns, whether it's multifamily, you name it. So the vision has to be clear and compelling. If the promise is clear, the price is easy. I mean, do we mind spending $200,000 or $250 a door? Depends on what the prize is. If the prize is clear, if it meets our social, spiritual, and economic capital framework, then the price is easy. But so what we'll ask is we start with a story before the structure. Our story, we started with a local story. The property happened to have a local family called the Taylor family that owned this property. It was called Taylor Cotton Company, one of the largest cotton dealers in the world. Well, we named the project the Taylor. Now, you can't always do that, but you better have a story of why. I mean, Disney World didn't have a story down there. That wasn't like Cinderella's house. He created that. But he's got a story. I mean, and we think we need to put our projects on irreplaceable real estate. Now, there's a lot of ways we codify irreplaceable, but let's just say irreplaceable real estate in Disney's thing is what if you could put a multifamily where the Cinderella castle is? That'd be kind of irreplaceable, right? So we ask ourselves, is this in some way irreplaceable? And for us, that means we love the fact that we put them in places where there's buildings around us that have been built by people who don't live anymore, with materials we don't have anymore, with methodologies we don't do anymore, in some unique configurations we can't get approved hardly anymore. That's why we work scattered sites and historic downtown fabrics normally. So we start with that story, not structures, and then pull it full into the structure. So we ask ourselves the first things, what's all the non-negotiables? Like for our project, the non-negotiables, we can't adjust the floor plans and not impact the cost greatly. We can move the windows within the space, and there was some broken thinking that you got to put the window in the center of every room. That's not the case. As we got to aligning the, what we don't like about new multifamily developments is we think that they lack attention to detail and best practices in the way they use the materials mostly. I mean, they'll just stick different material types and colors and elevations just to try to make it interesting. And it looks like somebody vomited a lot of different styles of architecture onto a building. I mean, they're bastardized. They're horrible. And nobody wants one. I mean, the developers, the returns they want it, but nobody's in the community going, "Oh, I hope they bring me one of them ugly multifamilies." Because in 20 years, it's going to look like Ray Charles built it. So what we did is we came and said, okay, what constraints do we have? And then how could we make this thing beautiful? And we realized that the only way we could afford to make it beautiful is to simplify our way to beauty, not add our way to beauty. We can't afford to build in some of the ways we wish we could today. I mean, dealing with the strata, how much masonry can we put on this? What other kind of material types? What are the windows like? What is, these things? But we've worked our way. We think we have some real beautiful designs. And we also asked ourselves, if our town or this place had grown organically, what would it look like? And so we didn't make all the buildings the same. We made it look like they had grown as the town would have grown, which was just some more thoughtfulness. So that's how we did it on the design side, getting some real great voices around the table. What we play in a lot of the multifamily is a general contractor for vision. We take the high intention and make sure it shows up with the GC, make sure it shows up in the capital raising, make sure it shows up in the, in the landscaping, make sure it shows up all the way through the project. Because right now, most projects are driven by a spreadsheet. And a lot of the passion is lost.
Do the tenants stay longer? Are they willing to pay more than they would otherwise for what you're seeing for something that's intentional and is truly unique?
Absolutely. They live in a story. And I mean, if you look, what is retention? People want to live in something beautiful. Because if you live in a palace, you think you're a prince. And if you live in a prison, you think you're a prisoner. Structures make us. We don't just make them. And so they'll pay more. Secondly, they stay more. The retention, they'll stay longer. I mean, everything we're looking at, which we're in a season where the wind's blowing right for multifamily, no doubt. But the 100% occupancy, just about. I mean, waiting list, because they're beautiful. Also, they have friends. We know if you have one friend in a complex, your retention goes up dramatically. If you have multiple friends, it goes up even more. We see that the hotelification and the desire for hospitality is going up in there. Ash's definition of hospitality is, I thought of you before you got here. And so the intentionality of what we're doing, they notice the difference. They notice that they're not widgets, and that makes all the difference in the world. We know what it's like to be you, and so that's a big piece of it. And then also sophisticated ways to raise the capital and bring alignment. There's a lot of tools that we're using around that, because one thing is if you haven't done every part of this, you can't have the context. Most of the time, people work in silos, right? Like when we look at the construction budget and we ask ourselves questions like, why are you doing this way? Well, they're doing it because they didn't talk to the subs. They don't know the guys who are building the podium, or they don't know the guys who are doing this. So they're making decisions based on not having a knowledge of the people that's doing the work, or maybe that's the same way across other pieces. So we think that there's importance that you have that same lens and detail throughout all those major pillars: the construction, the design, the execution, the lease up, the marketing, the raising of the capital, the alignment of return of the investment and return on the investment. That all that should have a golden thread, like a restaurant we're talking about.
Everybody talks about the big cities that have all the big jobs and all the buildings and all the infrastructure, but you're building a world where these are happening in small towns with less than 10,000 people. So you have a lens into kind of why people are moving, why people are staying. Are you bullish that folks will continue to kind of move back to these small towns and experience these small town feels? Is the goal to grow them, or is the goal to just give a better place to the people that are already there, or is it both?
Yes, and one thing, people that invest into this, we've never went to a place where there wasn't the money we needed. Money has never been the problem. Even in the smallest towns, there's always people with money. What they know is, I'm not investing into this because it's impossible I'll even get my return of my capital, much less a return on. So what we have to take them is from impossible to possible to probable. And that's that's a specific journey. But I would say this: the average town we're working on, that we're doing the big multifamily, is bigger than 10,000, but towns of 10,000 can easily have a restored downtown. And we see the downtowns as like complex mixed use developments with fractional ownership. The first thing you got to have is a vision. I mean, and if you've got a McDonald's in your town, or a Wendy's or Burger King, they're doing a million something. You could have a fabulous iconic restaurant too. I mean, it's always there. I mean, you go into town, the Dollar Gen's always cranking off money. There's all these businesses. It's not like there's not anything going on. It's just they all stink. So what we look at is we ask ourselves, the first thing we have to have is a patron. We need somebody with a love for that place. We don't go into a town where there's not a person that feels they love that place and are committed. Now, we know that we'll need somebody with the 5 eyes. We'll need somebody who can invest money. We need somebody with ideas. We need somebody that's implicated or their heart's tied to that place. We need someone who has influence, and we need someone who will intercede or stand in on behalf. Like our newest town we're about to go to is Camden, South Carolina. We just got to deal with them. A guy's a former Disney Imagineer and 2 or 3 other leaders, and they want to take this whole town on. And so they're like, we want to save this town. We're investors. We want to do it to make it. We want to make a good return, and we want to do something good with it. And so I really believe this. We've seen commercial real estate become an asset class. We've seen residential and now single family for rent become an asset class. I really believe there's potential, Chris, that one day historic towns that have been thoughtfully curated, like I'm talking about, will be their own asset class. I think it's that much potential in it.
That was my next question. You are uncovering this whole new way of thinking about real estate and asset classes, which is, it might just be someone that is from the old town and it's their nostalgia. But what you're talking about is, rather than thinking about a building, think about an entire community and restoring it, becoming something that more companies say they do, is we restore, old towns. Is that fair?
Well, and we see the value in complex mixed use developments that have irreplaceable real estate. I mean, again, to me, it seems like common sense. I mean, I think I'm so grateful that I'm not too smart, because if I was too smart, I couldn't see this stuff. I mean, I just see it simply. Think about this: the greenest buildings we'll ever build already exist. And there's not a lot of bargains in new construction, but there's bargains in buying existing square footage and doing thoughtful renovations to get there. And so this is what, I mean, imagine it, and people, it's like, it's the difference to me from a wrecked car to a remodeled house. The same work that we're doing to build hybrid downtowns and try to build places people want to live, they already exist, but we don't have the mindset and the methodology to deal with them. And it's being driven again by the contractors are a lot the problem. Those guys, if you see an old building, they'll say, if you just tear this down, I can build just something newer, faster and better and cheaper. Well, that's them. We got the wrong guy looking at the wrong project. There's nobody that can build what we can renovate to. The quality, the beauty, the things. So what we do is we're able to take, imagine in like our downtown's about 1 million square foot of retail. And it's performing fabulously. But we got it to the place, and what we did is think intentionally, like, where is the restaurant? What taught us this, we kept having people come to us. We don't work for cities. We get that kind of talk all the time. Then people haven't got any money and they can't do nothing. We work for investors, people who have a vision of putting money at risk and getting it with a return. That's who we work for. Now, I would say that our people have more than just a financial lens. They want to do good and do well. That's the people that are attracted to us. But what we come in, we look at the downtown, even if they don't own a building, we still plan it for them so they can set a vision and help the people that do own it build a relationship with them. But we'll plan a whole area and say, listen, here's where the restaurant needs to be. Here's where the dresses should be. Here's what we plan it like it's a complex development, because we had these guys come over trying to think of the name of their group, but Bayer, I think, or something. They came over, they build big communities, and they'll have like a 50-person team to build a 1 million square foot community. And downtowns take it on with one investor and a part-time Main Street director. It's like, dude, you're sunk. So what we're doing is bringing sophistication and models. We've modeled 80% of everything we do as a model. You can see it. It makes sense. Now, I say 20% of what we do is miracles, and you just got to pray for them. That stuff is I can't box that thing, but I can tell you we keep having them. So, but that's what we do. We view it like a complex mixed-use development, and we place everything and understand how it will work best. No, but that's kind of the way we do it. We know where the anchors go. We know what fills in the blanks, and then we also build a criteria of how you'll get there. You may start with C plus and move to B plus and move to A plus. We don't start building the town out like a beautiful, Austin new development that they spent $700 a foot or whatever, $1 million a foot, whatever they do. It's just we start where we are, and we step forward of a plan of continual growth and success where the investors flourishing, the town's flourishing, and even the people in the community. And our definition of flourishing is when the people who have the least are experiencing the most, we think it's flourishing. So if the dishwasher's not flourishing, we've missed it.
All right, I want to spend a few minutes because there's probably a lot of people listening that are super intrigued. And so I want to just get into kind of like the nuts and bolts and nuance. Whether it's Camden, South Carolina, or whatever, when folks are coming to you, do they already need to own the real estate? And if they don't, from your perspective, how confident can you be that you can execute a plan if they don't own a lot of it? And as soon as, one or two things good start happening, there's a rush to buy all the other stuff and the plan just kind of stalls. Like, what needs to be in place for y'all to say, we have a project that we can now go put 10 years into? Does that make sense?
It does. It's a great question, actually. And the answer again is yes and. So we come to people who own almost everything. Sometimes we come to people that own nothing. We have to vet where they are. So like I had one group recently look at a place in Texas, not far from you, LaGrange, Texas. So we took a look at that town, and they were interested in buying a good piece of the town. And so one thing we have to do is, and you're right, when we start buying or people know that we're buying, we do have a bit of that rush on stuff. So we do have to ask ourselves, what's the MVP, the minimum viable project? We've got to figure out what's the mass we got to have to create what we want to create, because for us, momentum is the magic. That's why we call our formula the momentum method. No momentum makes you look worse than you are, and a lot of momentum makes you look better than you are. So we've learned about towns, and if I ask somebody if a town's growing, they're going to tell me how they feel. So you want to make them feel something at the right time. Like we can grow a town without people feeling much, and then we can make them feel something. So you have to think about that as you're growing. I'll give you an example. Me and Ash bought these. This is a residential example, but we wanted to fix the worst neighborhood in our city. We bought like 14 houses, 7 on each side of a street, and they were junky, nobody living in them. And what I did is I renovated the inside of one side of the street and the 3 sides of the back of those houses. And then I got ready and we renovated the front, cut the trees, and jumped across the street and renovated the outside 3 on the other ones. And everybody in the community is like, the whole place has changed. Well, it's because we made them feel something.
Right.
And so we do that in town some too. But when someone comes to us, we look at the place, and there's certain things we really need. We can do it with 1 block, but we really need 2 blocks of historic downtown fabric to make it work really well without building infill. We need certain, we say we can win 1 gas tank away. I love winning when it's 2 hours away. If there's a population of people, and when we build a place, normally it's a destination first. It starts Thursday, Friday, Saturday. We can't start Monday mornings. And we bring them in usually by iconic food. I don't have a plan that works without food and hospitality. So I say so much meaningful happens at the table. You decide who to marry, where to bury. Fellowship happens at the table. We got to have food. Nobody's going staying at a place that has bad food. And so we start with hospitality. We start with having some fractional overnight stay. We start with serving a specific niche. Think about this. If you got a small town, maybe it's 2 blocks each way. Like I looked at another town outside of your Aledo, Texas. We had some folks approach us from there, and we're actually working in the town that's named for Aledo, Illinois right now. We've got clients that are buying up. They bought over 40 buildings in Aledo, Illinois. But anyway, what we did is we say you got to be known for something, okay? So, for example, if you had all different kinds of shops and nobody knows what you're about, it's like we got a dress shop, we got a men's shop, we got a skate center, we've got a bowling, you got all this stuff. It's just like somebody threw a bunch of stuff on there. But if you can intentionally do it, you may say this little town is going to be known for women's apparel. We're going to have women's shoes. We're going to have women's bags. We're going to have great dress shops. We're going to have custom made jeans. We're going to have a jewelry. If you get clusters where people can know what they're going there for, nobody can compete with you if you're known for something. In Opelika, what we want to be known for is unique food and hospitality, food and beverage, music and art. That's it. That's what we want to be known for. We want everything to line around that. And we say no to businesses all the time that don't align with that. Because if not, you're bringing them into your pool, and if you don't watch it, you'll have somebody poop in the pool you're all swimming in. I mean, it's crazy. You got to have it for something. And so people do this kind of sophistication when they build a big development, right? They're thinking about how it's fit together. Towns don't have this. So if they come to us with a town they love, we do a survey and ask ourselves what's possible and get them kind of to a minimum viable working portfolio if that's what they want to do. If they come with some buildings, we ask, what do you need to acquire? And even in the sense of like we did a project, Kenosha, Wisconsin, they came to us with simply a large building. They wanted to do a brewery and an event space to be catalytic for their downtown. And we helped them do it because we had experience in those businesses. So we helped them do a project, and we helped them do the RFP. They got it from the city for $1. They did whatever $34 million worth of work to it, and it's flourishing. And we took them from being a commercial builder to understanding what it means to be a community investor. And now they're doing more of that. So we kind of coached them into that world. Did I ever answer your question?
You did. And I have one more question, and then we'll bring it home. This has been more than I could have asked for, but again, my business hat's on, and then I'm just thinking about this is, okay, I approach you. I own 50 buildings in a small town. We got a lot of work to do. How do you, from your side, if somebody here is listening and they're the next guy or girl that's going to call you with their, big dream, is how do y'all even, what does a contract look like? I imagine just hundreds of contracts of, okay, for this business, this building, is it one master agreement? Like how does it work if I'm working with you?
So it kind of organically grew like everything else. And our team and all this. So they come to us. We used to I didn't know what to charge. So I do it for people and say, I tell you what, I'll fix your problem and you pay me what you think it's worth. Thank goodness I did that for generous people. They paid me good. It was good. We started charging for fees. So now we'll still do a project where we just tell you, this is how long it's going to take. This is what it's going to cost. We scope the work out and give them a price. Sometimes we do it for fees and equity where we take a smaller amount of fees and we become their partner in the project and take some of it in equity. And they love that because we're alongside them. And the third iteration of this is fees, equity, and we bring capital. Now, sometimes we'll come in, we'll lay out the project, we'll get a piece of equity, and we've got a lot of capital friends who want to, if we're in it, they want to be in it. So we've got access to capital to do it that way. So what we try to do, there's really kind of 2 levels. We do project level or portfolio level. So projects, we come in and help them understand what the projects are. And we may have a specific, like, John, help us say this side of the street. We're going to launch a restaurant. We're going to start a retail store, brewery, distillery, and a concept that's going to be, gaming and coffee. Well, we'll help with that. Or they say, hey, we've got a portfolio. Usually, it takes, there's no hard fast, but $10 million to 15 million is probably the minimum portfolio size that we can serve, and they can get value depending on what they're doing in a downtown and how much they bought the stuff for. But again, all the way up to a couple of 100 million, 300-400 million. But what we do is we come alongside them and we say, you can either be a retainer client, and we set up these frameworks of how we add value to them and grow their team, usually the C-suite and and the people that are there, or we'll do a specific project with starting line, finish line, and deadline. So, like, one of our clients come along recently and they want to build a boutique hotel on their event business and add in some other components. And we help them work with the designers of the project and played that general contractor vision and got it from a dream to everything lined up. And then they can choose whether they want us to come and help them with training wheels to get it executed. So it's a bit customized, but normally we come along and help people from every stage of just, I've got a project I want to do and dreaming, to I've had this a while and it's not growing.
Yep. All right, John. This is more than I could ask for. I appreciate it, man. This was great.
Man, it's fun. I feel like I rambled on the whole time. I hope you can get something good out of it.
I think more of this stuff should happen. I haven't, we spoke a little bit. Our company assembled almost 90 acres of land in Fort Worth back in 2014 and 15 and worked on a kind of a revitalization. As I listen to you, there's a lot of things we probably did right. And there's things I wish I had known what I know now that I would have done differently. But this is just fascinating stuff. And the world needs more people like you.
I'm grateful to be doing it. I think I give hope to idiots, that people say, hey, if that guy can do something, anybody can. I'm like poster child for idiots. But I'm grateful to be doing it. And I love what I'm doing. I'm so darn excited. I mean, I never dreamed. I mean, what do you do when your dreams come true and then you dream bigger and they come true? And it's in all the areas. I mean, I was thinking last night as I looked at Ash, I thought, man, why does this beautiful lady love me and want to be with me? I mean, why am I more attracted to her today than meeting her 30 years ago? Dude, it's incredible. I mean, I didn't get what I deserved. And, that whole thing when when a turtle's on a fence post, he didn't get there by himself. I got a lot to be grateful for. I could hang out with you for days, though, but we're going to do it in person here soon. I can't wait to get to see you and us spend some time together. It's going to be a lot of fun.
We are, man. We're going to make it happen. You told me on that walk I was on the other day, I said, yeah, maybe later this year, next year. You said, dude, you need to get your priorities straight.
Right, dude, get your stuff together. It's like you having a great deal that's sitting, it's like, I can get that thing next year. You wouldn't say that, man. You'd be on it. You'd be jumping on it. This is more important than a big deal.
It is. All right, John. Thank you so much. And I'll talk to you soon, man.